Hi, everybody. I'm Braun Scherl. I'm delighted to be here with you today for today's session of Women's Health Tech. Just in the way of brief background, I'm an entrepreneur, a business builder, a marketing strategist, an author and a speaker, and my most important title in the business world is Vagipreneur, which is a person in the business of female sexual and reproductive health, which means I get to spend my days and nights thinking about and building businesses from menstruation through menopause. I'm delighted to be joined today by Ann Garnier, founder and CEO of RelayHealth, who I'm going to turn over to Ann to share a little bit of background before we jump right into our conversation.
Thanks, Rachel. It's such a pleasure to be on the program today. As we've talked before, and I've shared my background, I'm a longtime healthcare entrepreneur, done a lot of work in women's health. And so, some of the early products in high-risk pregnancy, preterm birth, and fertility. But I turned my attention to menopause a few years ago when I myself started that transition and just found firsthand how difficult it is for women. And so RelayHealth is transforming the menopause journey using advanced technology and empowering women to thrive. That's my passion. And this is what I'm doing for the rest of my work career is helping
I want to jump into that. So there are a couple of patterns that we see very frequently in this space, and you just identified two of them. One is this isn't your first rodeo. You bring a tremendous amount of experience from other gigs or other rodeos, if you will. And then secondly, that the business was built from a personal experience in 2017 when you started going through menopause. Describe what RelayHealth is and how people who might be in this life stage or thinking they're in this life stage or really have no idea how they interact and what the benefits are of working with the platform.
Sure. So we're a digital health platform that provides evidence-based guidance and technology to support women on their journey, along with expert education and a community for support. So it really pulls into one sort of one-stop shop, everything a woman might need to personalize her menopause journey, because every woman's journey is unique. So from, finding out about menopause and how it's affecting you, to managing your symptoms, to continuing to get support to thrive in midlife, it's a full solution for women in this life stage.
So that's another piece I want to dive into. Many people don't know much about menopause before they go through it, or they live with someone who goes through it. And I find it's always astounding for people to learn just how many symptoms there are.
34.
That you wouldn't necessarily, 34. And how long is the average, if there is such a thing, if we could find her, what's the average length of time that people spend in perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause?
Sure. So I like to refer to menopause as a life stage. It encompasses 1/3 of a woman's life. And it typically starts in your early 40s with perimenopause, but it can start earlier in your late 30s when your body starts to experience, the initial symptoms of menopause: trouble sleeping, fatigue, hot flashes, vaginal dryness. The average age that women actually reach menopause, which is defined as 12 consecutive months without a period, unless you have other, indications for sudden menopause or early menopause, is 51. So on average, women are reaching that milestone at 51, and then they're officially postmenopausal.
For the rest of their lives.
For the rest of their lives. So when women say I'm in menopause, it's like, okay, well, what stage of menopause are you in? Are you premenopausal? Are you perimenopausal? Are you postmenopausal? So yeah, there's just a lot. It is complex. It's a very complex life stage, and women go into it, really not knowing anything. I mean, like me, they're typically blindsided. And then all of a sudden you're sort of scrambling to get a handle on what's happening to your body. And unfortunately, there's not very many trained clinicians in menopausal care, as well as just kind of general midlife women's health.
But more and more every day are starting to talk about this.
Absolutely.
Just to give a sense of the breadth of this opportunity, lest someone says once again that women's health is a niche opportunity. 1.2 billion women will be in menopause by 2025, which, if you just look at your calendar, isn't that far away. You said something else that is really critical when you're working in this very broadly defined space of sex tech, FemTech and
Mhm.
women's health, which is how
Mhm.
complicated a life stage it is. And that's something
Mhm.
that we see whether you're talking about pregnancy, fertility,
Mhm.
infertility, menstruation, menopause, and that sexual enjoyment, sexual satisfaction. And it's because so many different systems
Mhm.
are at play. So it's not
Right.
just a physiological response, it's not just a
Mhm.
psychological response, it's emotional, behavioral,
Mhm.
contextual, social, and
Mhm.
clearly there are so many physiological
Mhm.
factors. But one of the reasons I think it's so exciting to be in this space is these are really complicated things
Mhm. Mhm.
to think about. Um, so we understand the life stage and we can share a lot more, or we can refer people to
Mhm.
resources
Sure.
for how big the size of the prize is. What is the business model for Lisa Health? How will you make money, or how are you making money if you are right now?
Sure. So we're working on the next version of our product, which we're pretty excited about, and we'll be offering a subscription model for women on a basic and a premium basis.
So there be a basic, it's a subscription service.
Right.
And do you have any data as to how long, we talk all the time about lifetime
hmm
value, and lots of the entrepreneurs who might be listening
Sure.
really like to get their hands around some of those metrics. Can you give us a sense of either how many people are on the platform, how many people you need to be on the platform till you approach profitability, lifetime value, any of these big numbers that we
Sure.
celebrate and work
Yeah.
towards?
Well, I know that people love to have those milestones, but we don't share them out. But I think if you look at menopause as a life stage that's encompassing 30 years, and women are living, longer and better than ever before, there's plenty of opportunity to establish a relationship with a woman over many, many years. So, our belief is that the lifetime value of the relationship with a woman who's interacting with our product, for example, is very long, right? Because a woman's body is changing over those menopause stages.
And it's interesting, totally respect you
hmm
don't want to share it. There are other
Sure.
entrepreneurs who just shout them for the rooftops to help people understand what the philosophy is behind that, because there are always good reasons for not sharing and there are always good reasons for sharing.
Sure. Well, we're a privately held company, and, like other companies, we're working to achieve, various milestones. And, depending on where you're at, you get compared to, other companies who, maybe further ahead, but, from a sheer numbers perspective, but perhaps don't have the same competitive advantages you might have in other areas. So I think it's just a way of, kind of managing the conversation.
So many of the companies that I work with, also in menopause, specifically, as well as other
Sure.
areas, have have two have at least two revenue streams. You're focused on
hmm
direct to consumer. Do you see a path in the future where you will be interacting with employers or large insurance providers now that people
hmm
are literally just
hmm
starting
Right.
to have an understanding of the economic impact, um, and the overall
hmm
impact on their
hmm
workforce of
hmm
women in menopause?
Absolutely. I mean, we do think that there's a viable, business model, B2B to C, through enterprise employers and payers. I've long said that, they're already supporting, younger women in the workforce around pregnancy and fertility solutions. And a lot of those women are leaving the workplace. This was even before COVID. Employers have a retention problem, but who's left, behind to, hold down the fort? It's typically midlife women, because they're in mid career, and they don't want to sort of give up that momentum. They need to put their kids through college. They need to save their retirement. They're just also in a different life stage. They're typically not caring for young children. So I do think there's an opportunity to better support women in the workplace. Absolutely.
And I always feel that the conversation about women's health and building these businesses
Mm,
is really supported when we're
mm,
informed by these other impacts. So you talked about there are many, many leading edge
mm,
human resources policies in companies where they're
mhm,
providing fertility benefits, they're
mhm,
providing pregnancy benefits, they're providing
mhm,
maternal benefits, because to your point,
mhm.
they understand the value
Right.
of these customers. customers, excuse me, of these employees. We're only now starting to hear, to your point, the value of keeping these midlife women, and we have many, many different descriptions for them, but women who are probably out of their childbearing years. Maybe they're older, maybe their kids are older, maybe their kids are out of the house, and valuing and trying to quantify the amount of investment and skills that these people bring to an organization. So, you know, a 50-year-old woman, a 55-year-old woman could have been at an organization for 25 years or have had a 30-year long career and has a lot of wisdom to share. One of the things that I'm always interested about is we're getting much more comfortable with pregnancy and fertility, and you can obviously see when a woman's pregnant at some point in her pregnancy, whereas menopause might be more invisible. How do you see the conversation ultimately happening between employers or large insurance plans and menopausal women? Like, do I want to be able to tell someone, Joe, I have to stop the presentation, I'm having a hot flash? Or what are some of the ways that employers can support women in this stage while also protecting the woman's right to control her own health information?
Sure. Well, in the UK, they're actually, ahead of the US, where, many large corporations are establishing menopause policies, and they're providing supervisor training. I kind of call it 1.0. You might be able to get a dustpan or, have a uniform that's got breathable fabric. I think there's plenty of opportunities to support women with more advanced technology, but I think it's a great start. And it really kind of shows that, menopause will become mainstream in the workplace from a benefits perspective. It will just take time. And I think, in terms of what you want to disclose in the workplace, it's always been a personal decision, right? If you're going through fertility treatment and it's supported by your employer, you may not be comfortable disclosing that. And you may not be comfortable disclosing that you're experiencing menopause symptoms. But at least if you had a supported environment and benefit, that if you are experiencing, some difficulties like fatigue, right, lost productivity related to that, that you can get some expert support.
One of the things that's interesting about what you said is if we think about the progression or the advancement of the conversation about women in the workforce, we started, maybe there was a door to a closet where a woman could nurse if she could pump, if she was still breastfeeding. And now we have, egg freezing benefits, and we're not all the way there, but we've made a lot of progress. So that seems to me, based on my work, that's kind of where we are with menopause. Even the idea, so for people who were listening, the idea that a different fabric, if you're a factory worker or if your work requires you to be in a uniform, that the material and the characteristics of the material could have an impact on your comfort. These are new thoughts that you're part of, I'm part of, lots of companies are part of the dialogue. So we're in COVID. Hopefully we're coming out of it. I'm not a prognosticator, so I'm not going to say when anything goes back to normal. But one of the things that we've been hearing over and over during COVID is that women's health, very broadly defined, is having its moment. So we see, excuse me, all kinds of increases, double digit, triple digit increases in telehealth, in purchase of products that people use for self-care or for partner enjoyment or accessing information or the number of searches. So lots of people are talking about related topics. How do you stand out in these conversations, and how do you obtain customers?
Sure. Well, I think our positioning from the beginning has always been, being a leading, trusted, science-backed brand for menopause. We know that women historically have not been well supported, and they spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year on, products and services that, for many women don't work and may actually be harmful. So, we do see that women are looking for these, trusted sources to support their decision making.
And what are you doing to reinforce that trusting relationship?
Sure. So we certainly focus on evidence-based, strategies for women to manage their menopause journey. We provide, expert education from, leaders in, various menopause domains. And, we continue to be committed to, helping to support and advance research in this area that's been just historically under-researched.
Right. And just to think about it, when you think of the 34
Mhm.
symptoms of menopause, when Anne talks about the different specialists, that's not
Right.
only aging specialists or menopause
Mhm.
specialists, it's nutritionists,
Mhm.
it's fitness and
Mhm.
mental acuity. There's so
Right.
many different aspects to it. So one of the questions that we have a lot, regardless of what space of women's health they're in, is, wow, there seem like there's so many menopause companies, or there's so many
Mm.
menstrual health companies, and how are you going to differentiate? And so one of the questions that came in was, how are you different from other companies?
Sure.
And I preface that with saying that most people in the space
Mhm.
would say, as I think you will, oh, there's plenty of business to go around. There's not
There
going to
is.
be one company that figures this out. So if you were to
Right.
characterize what makes you unique, so that we can head
Sure.
on address the question in terms of how you approach your relationship with women and the information you provide and the evidence-backed nature of the information. How would you characterize what's different? Let's say we
Mhm.
get to a point where women have 17 menopause companies to
Mhm.
choose from, and they're
Right.
aware of all of them, which is a big issue also. How do you differentiate yourselves in the marketplace?
Sure. Well, I mean, you're an expert in the landscape as well. You know that because of the complex symptomatology, that you may be focused just on vaginal health, right? Some aspect of vaginal health, and you can start a company just around that. You can start a company just around sexual wellness. So when you look at the landscape, there's quite a lot of room for for people to jump in and focus on a particular area of that experience for women. Companies like mine are taking a more comprehensive approach. So I think that's one differentiator, is that we're trying to support women across the entire journey. We're also, differentiated by, using technology to support women on this journey. And I think that you can define technology in a lot of ways, right? If you've got, a diagnostic, for example, right? That's technology. If you're developing an advanced, therapeutic in the pharmaceutical arena, I would argue that's advanced technology. But I think ours is focused on AI and machine learning to really, pinpoint and identify a woman's unique symptomatology and personalizing the therapeutic strategies for her.
So I took your assessment test this morning,
Sure,
and I
sure.
got my email. Describe to the folks who are listening what that means, that personalized approach, and what that
Mhm.
looks like in terms of the information or the product that they receive from you.
Right. So, one of the things we've heard a lot from women is, they want personalization. They understand that their body is unique. I always say menopause is like a fingerprint or a snowflake. And so
I love that.
yeah, it is. I mean, we do need to strive towards, leveraging technology. I always say, when you have 3.8 billion women around the world, right? Every single one will become menopausal. Why should they be left to figure things out on their own when we have technology that's being used for virtually every other area of healthcare, right? Almost every other condition is using technology in some way or another. So I don't think that, that women, 3.8 billion women, should have to rely on, I think, no tech or old tech. I think that this is a very complex life stage, and women deserve more and better personalization.
And so does that mean, in the course of my relationship with you,
Mhm.
that your information and your AI and machine learning becomes
Mhm.
smarter about me and continues to
Sure.
give me customized recommendations?
Sure. And it also, benefits from, understanding how, women are experiencing that same journey. I mean, that's the whole idea, is that, you get smarter and smarter and can personalize your solution, more and more over time.
And what form does the solution come in terms of, is it information only? Is it consultations? Is it products? What do people get when they enter your ecosystem and they take the assessment and they are building, hope to build a long-term personalized relationship with you through menopause?
Yeah, so currently with the current version of the product, we're, providing guidance around evidence-based strategies that can help to holistically manage, the various symptoms of menopause. And so as a woman's body changes, then, we can recommend additional or different strategies for her, because it's always, changing. And then in the next version of the product, we'll expand our profile and incorporate other evidence-based techniques that would include, other clinical therapies, as well as science-backed products and services.
Okay, so there will ultimately be, will you sell the products? Will you recommend them? Will you create them? Will you incorporate, or are you not there yet?
Well, we think that there's just so many solutions a woman may need during this life stage that as a company, we couldn't possibly create all of those products, right? And so for us, partnering is, I think for any company really, partnerships are a valuable part of the service that we provide. But, partnerships that meet our standards around evidence-based, science-backed solutions.
And I see every day, I spend a lot of time in that world of putting companies together. If you're going after people the same kinds of people who might have the same needs or some crossover, how can you collaborate? And I see, I'm curious what you see, a much greater openness on the part of all different kinds of companies, not just those in menopause, but around this idea of partnering, because offering solutions cover so many different areas of a woman's life. So to your point, are you going to be a mattress company? You're going to sell mattresses so people sleep better, and wicking pajamas and lubricants. I mean, there's so many
there are so many.
Yeah. I mean, you could become, if a company just focused around the products of menopause, you could, have a warehouse the size of Amazon practically.
And that's why when I mentioned earlier that there's just so much opportunity in the space. There are many, many parts of women's health, FemTech, menopause, as you say, whatever term you want to use, we don't lack for things to address to improve a woman's well-being. And I think that, creating a strong partner ecosystem, makes a lot of sense to be able to better support women.
So we don't have much time left, but I do want to ask you, for people who are listening, who are in this journey or thinking about starting a company, either what's your best tip, or the one thing you wish you knew before you started? And I'm happy to share mine, but you go first.
As I always tell people, you're in this, entrepreneurial journey for the long haul. So you really do have to be passionate about, whatever it is you're going to pursue. You don't need to know anything about it, because you're going to learn a lot on this journey. But the passion is something that you absolutely have to bring to the table.
So one of the questions that came in that I think we can address in the context of this last conversation is, menopause is having a moment. What does that mean in terms of how that translates into getting investment dollars? Here's what I would say. It is very difficult to raise money, period. No matter how much money there is, we still see the statistics, and this is just reality. Women get, less than 3% of institutional capital. And when you look at the numbers in this smaller category of FemTech, Sextech, or women's health, it's even a smaller percentage. So for me, part of this is, what would be your tip, and how do you then translate that into investors, is you have to really be passionate about your story. And what I mean by that is, listen, we see a lot of enthusiastic entrepreneurs all the time, but in reality, based on hundreds of data points, probably thousands, all these businesses take longer to build, are more expensive to build, are more grueling, are more exhausting than most people can imagine.
right.
So the first tool for me would be, if you have a thick skin, make it thicker and work on resilience and endurance, physical, emotional, and financial. The second is related, because when you're going into meeting after meeting, and you've done this and I've done this, where you're talking to people who are uncomfortable saying the word vagina, or want to die of embarrassment if the word clitoris is used, or labia, or hot flash, or whatever it is. Part of it is you have to have the tools to translate that story into something that's meaningful to them. So I always say, an investor doesn't have to be passionate about women's health for me to get an investment, or for you to get an investment. What they have to be is passionate about something we could offer them. And in this case, I always look at the numbers and say, they're huge numbers of people, tens of millions of people who are dealing with any one of these issues at any point in time, which means there are huge opportunities and the opportunity for enormous business. And we're starting to see these exits, and they're getting more and more exciting. But the bottom line, the headline to an investor who's queasy about this space is, look at the numbers. There's tons of money that has been made, and there's a lot more to be made by taking advantage of these opportunities.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much. And thank you guys so much. We are just about out of time, so we just wanted to share some of our upcoming events. We do have some upcoming Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, so be sure to sign up for the ones coming up next week and the following week. We wanted to quickly let you know, stay in touch. Follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. And lastly, thank you so much. Huge thank you to our guests.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's our pleasure. Thank you both, Rachel and Ann. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye.